Hello, my name is Brittany Knight, and I will be narrating this presentation on the topic of cybersecurity risk assessment for Group 5, United Kingdom. A cybersecurity risk assessment identifies the various information assets that could be affected by a cyber attack and then identifies the various risks that could affect those assets. It is important to first know what security measures need to be implemented to ensure a protected system. In modern society, all businesses and organizations that function with the assistance of technology require authentication in order to preserve the confidential information of both the business and the clientele. These forms of authentication include multi-factor, biometric, token, and transaction authentication methods. Multi-factor is the combination of two or more forms of identity verification, including PIN numbers, passwords, fingerprint scanning, etc. Biometric authentication is any physical form of user verification, such as voice recognition, fingerprint, and retinal scanning. This form of authentication is often utilized in multi-factor authentication, as opposed to being a sole form of verification. Token authentication includes the use of RFID chips, most commonly used in tags, which is pre-programmed with an electronic verification that alerts the lock system that the holder of the card is authorized access when within range of the lock system. Lastly, transaction authentication is common within banking systems as it notes the user's physical address and tracks the purchase history made with the debit card or banking account. For example, if purchases begin being made in a different part of the world while also being made within the user's known physical location, the bank is alerted to possible suspicious activity. Authorization differs from authentication, as authentication is accessing secure accounts, while authorization is what actions are allowed once access to the account has been given. Organizations do not allow any one person or persons to have open authorization to all factors of the operations, instead splitting up the authorization into sections to create levels of accountability. These levels of authorization are database administrator, which facilitates overall access to the internal database, security administrator, who monitors who is given what access within the database and when it is utilized, workload management administrator, who is responsible for monitoring and managing assigned tasks given to specific entities within a specific database, and finally, database authorities, non-administrative, which access all activity committed by entities that only hold access to general information within the system. Access control is a combination of authentication and authorization, with the accompaniment of additional security measures. There are three classifications of access control, and they are discretionary access control, mandatory access control, and role-based access control. Discretionary access control is the least restrictive form of access control out of the three options. Security controls and authorizations are established by the device owner. By allowing these security measures to be implemented by someone outside of a technology background, it raises the risk of oversight and ultimately malware. Mandatory access control is used within businesses or organizations that require a higher level of security, as it is not controlled by a single owner, simply managed. Each individual is classified by rank, and the classification determines what areas within the database that the individual is granted access. Finally, role-based access control is the most common form of access control within businesses and personal homes. With role-based, access to a system is established by a system administrator who designates the desired authorizations to the personnel, ensuring that each member has access to strictly the areas allotted. Security weaknesses can differ based on the type of business or targeted information. However, regardless of the situation, system weaknesses can be divided into three categories: people, technology, and policy. People have a tendency to leave computers unlocked, utilize weak passwords, and open malicious emails. Technology consists of outdated software, protocol limitations, and a failure to back up important data into the system. Policies can include failure to cover specific scenarios and failure to present clear and concise direction. It is important to have a vulnerability assessment matrix in place within any business or organization to provide a quick reference of what are potential risks and how to combat them. The vulnerability assessment matrix outlines areas of concern for the organization and ranks them according to the level of direct impact. The matrix also provides information on attack vectors for each vulnerability, followed by mitigation steps. From the vulnerability assessment matrix, a new area of focus is born, and that is in attack vectors and attribution analysis. This analysis presents common forms of attacks and what they entail. For example, malicious emails are when hackers send corrupted emails, infecting the victim's computer with a virus when the email is opened. User authentication hacking is when hackers obtain private login information of the user, gaining access to all personal information in which the login credentials protect. Toll fraud hacking is when fraudsters make calls to premium rates and take a cut of the revenue generated from these calls. And finally, phishing, the act of hackers searching for the personal or financial information of an individual or business. As with any entity who deals heavily with technology, there will always be risks. It is knowing what to do with those risks that determines success. For example, if company personnel are unaware of specific policies, the answer is to update policies to assign specific roles in a language that is easily understood. Also, conducting quarterly meetings with all personnel to refresh policy standards and explore areas of improvement. Second, if a system has been infiltrated due to malicious emails, it is important to educate personnel on what to look for in dangerous emails. Also, require that all account passwords meet a minimum security standard combination of 10 or more alphanumerical and special characters, along with updating the system firewall. And lastly, there are suspicions of insider theft. It is important to reiterate the company policy on consequences of illegal activity, encourage personnel reporting in the event of suspected activity, and ensure that all departments are surveilling company logs and tracking daily activity. That concludes the cybersecurity risk assessment. Thank you for joining in this presentation. I hope that it was informative and may assist with future risk assessments.